Shadows of the past, hopes for tomorrow. Two women, each running from their own shadows. One haunted by the past, the other by the present. Maya Thompson's life changed in an instant. One moment, everything was normal, and the next, her world was shattered. Seeking solace, she moved to a remote cabin on the shores of Crescent Lake, far from the life she once knew. Isolated and burdened by guilt, Maya has spent years avoiding people, living a quiet, reclusive life. Across town, Sarah Mitchell arrives at Crescent Lake with her 3 young daughters, carrying little more than the clothes on their backs. After years of enduring an abusive relationship, Sarah is desperate to rebuild her life and give her children the stability they've never known. But the scars of her past still linger, and she's constantly looking over her shoulder, afraid that her old life might catch up with her. Both women are drawn to each other, their connection offering a chance at healing and freedom. Maya has lived alone for years, her only real contact with the outside world being her friend, Evelyn, who runs the local general store. But Maya's quiet existence is about to be disrupted by the arrival of Sarah and her 3 girls. This is the moment when their paths first cross, and Maya's life will once again be changed forever. Sarah glanced nervously at her daughters, then back at Evelyn, who stood behind the counter. The bell above the door jingled as someone entered the store, and Sarah flinched at the unexpected sound. Evelyn gave a quick nod to the newcomer before turning her attention back to Sarah. "I've got a little room in the back where the girls can do their homework or watch TV if you ever need a break," Evelyn offered kindly. "Really? That would be amazing," Sarah said, her voice filled with relief. "I really need this job." "We look out for each other around here," Evelyn said with a smile. "I heard you've moved into the old Harper place. It's been empty for years. I can only imagine the work it needs." Sarah blushed, embarrassed by how much Evelyn seemed to know about her situation. "Yeah, it's a bit of a fixer-upper." Evelyn nodded sympathetically. "Well, you're not alone. In fact, Maya over there is your neighbor," she said, gesturing toward the woman who had just entered the store. Sarah turned to see a tall, slender woman standing by the door, her long, dark hair tucked under a worn baseball cap. Maya had already noticed the small family at the counter and recognized them from the lake a few days earlier. She wasn't thrilled that Evelyn was trying to pull her into a conversation, but she didn't want to be rude. "Yes," Maya said quietly, adjusting her cap as one of Sarah's daughters turned to look at her, followed by the other 2 and their mother. "Hi. I'm Sarah, and these are my girls," Sarah said, stumbling over her words as she introduced her daughters. She extended her hand toward Maya, waiting for a response. When Maya didn't immediately react, Sarah glanced nervously at Evelyn, who gave her an encouraging smile. For a moment, Maya stood frozen, staring at the floor. Slowly, she reached out her hand, her fingers brushing against Sarah's. The touch sent a jolt through her, something she hadn't felt in years. Startled, she quickly pulled her hand back and shoved it into her pocket, unsure of what to make of the strange sensation. "I like your hat," one of the younger girls said, her voice cheerful as she looked up at Maya. Maya turned slightly toward the girl, grateful for the distraction. The child was smiling at her, and Maya gave a small nod but remained silent. "I had a hat like that at our old house," the little girl continued. "Rain, don't bother the lady," Sarah said gently, trying to keep her daughters from overwhelming Maya. "I'm sure she has things to do." Maya was about to retreat when the older girl spoke up. "I saw you at the lake, didn't I?" Maya nodded again. "Yes," she said softly, feeling uncomfortable under the scrutiny of the children. She shifted her weight, fidgeting with the strap of the basket she was holding. She didn't like being the center of attention, especially when it felt like people were looking too closely at her scars, both the visible ones and the ones she kept hidden. "You don't talk much, do you?" the older girl asked, tilting her head to get a better look at Maya's face under the cap. Maya took a step back, her discomfort growing. "Storm, don't be rude," Sarah said, her voice firm but kind. She turned to Maya, her expression apologetic. "I'm sorry." "Sorry," Storm echoed, though she didn't seem particularly remorseful. I just like talking. It's okay, Maya mumbled, her voice barely audible. She glanced at Sarah, then quickly looked away. I'll stay out of your way. Sarah smiled, though it was tinged with sadness. You don't have to. I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot of each other, being neighbors and all. Maya didn't respond. Instead, she grabbed a basket and headed toward the far end of the store, eager to escape the conversation. She could feel their eyes on her as she walked away, her limp more pronounced than usual. Only the youngest girl, Rain, seemed too distracted by the candy display to notice. Evelyn leaned in toward Sarah, speaking in a low voice. Maya's a bit of a loner, but she's good people. She's been through a lot, though I don't know the details. Just give her time. She's not used to being around folks. Sarah nodded, her gaze still fixed on Maya's retreating figure. We all have our secrets, she said quietly, thinking of her own past and the things she had left behind. I won't push her. Evelyn smiled warmly. That's the spirit. So, when can you start? Sarah's face lit up with relief. I can start right away. For the first time in a long time, Sarah felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this small town by the lake could be the fresh start she and her girls so desperately needed. And maybe, in time, she and Maya could help each other heal from the wounds they both carried. As Maya left the store, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. She had spent years keeping people at arm's length, but there was something about Sarah and her girls that tugged at her in a way she hadn't expected. She didn't know what it was yet, but she had a feeling that her quiet, solitary life was about to change in ways she couldn't have imagined. Shadows of the Past, Hopes for Tomorrow, Part 2. Maya walked briskly back to her cabin, the basket of groceries swinging at her side. The familiar path through the woods was comforting, the crunch of leaves underfoot grounding her in the present. But her mind was elsewhere, replaying the brief encounter with Sarah and her daughters. She hadn't expected to feel anything, let alone the strange pull she felt toward them. It was unsettling. She had spent years perfecting the art of isolation, keeping her distance from people, from emotions, from anything that could stir up the past. But something about Sarah's quiet strength, the way she had looked at Maya with understanding rather than pity, had stirred something deep inside her. And the girls, Storm, Rain, and the youngest one, whose name she hadn't caught, had looked at her with such innocence, such curiosity. It had been a long time since anyone had looked at her like that. Maya shook her head, trying to push the thoughts away. She didn't need this. She didn't need people complicating her life. She had built a wall around herself for a reason, and she wasn't about to let it crumble now. By the time she reached her cabin, the sun was beginning to set, casting a golden glow over the lake. Maya paused for a moment, taking in the view. The water was calm, reflecting the colors of the sky like a mirror. It was one of the reasons she had chosen this place, its quiet beauty, its isolation. Here, she could be alone with her thoughts, her memories, her pain. But as she stood there, watching the sun dip below the horizon, she couldn't shake the feeling that her solitude was no longer enough. That maybe, just maybe, she didn't want to be alone anymore. Meanwhile, back at the Harper house, Sarah was trying to settle her girls into their new home. The old house was drafty and in desperate need of repairs, but it was theirs, and for the first time in years, Sarah felt a sense of ownership, of control over her life. She had spent so long running, hiding, trying to protect her daughters from the chaos of her past. But here, in this small town by the lake, she felt like they might finally have a chance at peace. "Mom, can we go to the lake tomorrow?" Storm asked, her eyes bright with excitement. "I saw it when we drove in. It's so pretty." Sarah smiled, ruffling her daughter's hair. "We'll see. I have to start my new job tomorrow, remember? But maybe after work, we can go for a walk." Storm pouted for a moment but quickly brightened. "Okay. I'll help with Rain and the little one while you're at work." Sarah's heart swelled with pride. Storm had always been the responsible one, the one who tried to take care of her sisters when things got tough. It wasn't fair that she had to grow up so fast, but Sarah was grateful for her help. "Thanks, sweetie," Sarah said, pulling her into a hug. "We're going to be okay here. I can feel it." Storm nodded, her face serious. "I know, Mom. We'll make it work." As Sarah tucked her daughters into bed that night, she couldn't help but think about Maya. There had been something in the woman's eyes, something haunted and familiar. Sarah knew that look all too well. It was the look of someone who had been through hell and was still trying to find their way back. She wondered what Maya's story was, what had driven her to live such a solitary life. But more than that, she wondered if Maya might be someone she could trust, someone who understood what it was like to carry the weight of the past. The next morning, Sarah arrived at the general store early, eager to start her new job. Evelyn greeted her with a warm smile, handing her an apron and showing her around the small shop. It wasn't much, but it was a job, and for Sarah, it was a step toward rebuilding her life. As the morning passed, Sarah found herself falling into the rhythm of the work, stocking shelves, ringing up customers, chatting with the regulars who came in for their morning coffee. It was simple, but it felt good to be doing something productive, something that wasn't just about survival. Around midday, the bell above the door jingled, and Sarah looked up to see Maya standing in the doorway, her hands shoved deep into the pockets of her jacket. Their eyes met, and for a moment, neither of them moved. "Hi," Sarah said, breaking the silence. Maya nodded, her expression unreadable. "Hi." Evelyn, who had been restocking a shelf nearby, smiled at the two women. "Maya, good to see you. Need anything today?" Maya hesitated, glancing at Sarah before answering. "Just some coffee." Evelyn nodded and busied herself behind the counter, leaving Sarah and Maya standing awkwardly in the middle of the store. "How are the girls?" Maya asked, her voice quiet. Sarah smiled, grateful for the small talk. "They're good. Excited about the lake. I promised them we'd go for a walk later." Maya nodded, her eyes flickering with something Sarah couldn't quite place. "It's a nice spot. Quiet." "Yeah," Sarah agreed. "That's what we need right now. Quiet." There was a pause, and Sarah could feel the weight of unspoken words hanging between them. She wanted to ask Maya more, to understand the woman who seemed so closed off, yet so familiar in her pain. But she didn't want to push. "I'm sorry about yesterday," Sarah said instead. "The girls can be a bit overwhelming." Maya shook her head. "It's fine. They're just kids." Sarah smiled, relieved. "Yeah, they are. But they've been through a lot. We all have." Maya's eyes softened, and for a moment, Sarah thought she might say something, might open up. But then Evelyn returned with Maya's coffee, and the moment passed. "Thanks," Maya muttered, taking the cup and turning toward the door. "Hey," Sarah called after her, surprising herself with her own boldness. Maya paused, glancing back over her shoulder. "If you ever want to join us at the lake, you're welcome to," Sarah said, her voice tentative. "I mean, if you're not busy." Maya stared at her for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, with a small nod, she turned and walked out the door. Sarah watched her go, a strange mix of hope and uncertainty swirling in her chest. She didn't know what had drawn her to Maya, or why she felt such a strong connection to the woman. But she knew one thing for sure, she wasn't going to give up on her. That evening, as the sun began to set over Crescent Lake, Sarah and her daughters walked along the shore, their laughter echoing across the water. Storm and Rain ran ahead, skipping stones and chasing each other, while Sarah held the youngest one's hand, smiling as she watched her girls play. Out of the corner of her eye, Sarah spotted a figure standing at the edge of the trees, half hidden in the shadows. It was Maya, watching them from a distance. For a moment, their eyes met, and Sarah gave her a small, encouraging smile. Maya hesitated, then slowly stepped out of the shadows and made her way toward them. As Maya approached, Sarah felt a sense of calm wash over her. Maybe they were both still running from their demons, still haunted by the past. But here, by the lake, in the quiet of the evening, it felt like they might finally be able to stop running. And maybe, just maybe, they could find a way to heal, together.